If you could change one mindset relating to disabled people in India overnight, what would that be?
People with disabilities are not capable. So just thinking of them as capable, contributing, if you start there, a lot of things would change.
I think people don't understand it, but sympathy and pity is the last thing
Right.
anyone with disability wants.
They're proud about who they are. They just want to be seen for who they are and be accepted for who they are.
A lot of people also consider disabled adults as asexual, and especially a country like India where sex is a taboo topic. What do you think about it?
Plain wrong. People with disabilities have the same needs as anybody else. A person with disability sometimes feels that because they have a disability, they should expect less. And if you are constantly settling for something, that's not going to make you happy.
Do you think India still has a long way to go about with disability rights and in terms of accessibility also?
Oh, absolutely. I think the one step that we're moving towards is, at least on paper, laws that have been put into place, but implementation is always the issue.
Hello and welcome to the Gut Feel Show. How are you doing?
Very well, and thank you for having me here.
Most welcome. This is a very, very important topic that we're going to discuss. First of all, I want to know more about your journey. What was the exact moment or that time when you started to feel that we need this application for disability?
My son Mihan, who's now 21, has Down syndrome, and he was very lucky to go to an inclusive school where he was quite well included. He had a bunch of friends, so life was pretty good. But I knew there was going to come a time when he was getting to be a teenager, when his classmates were going to move on to other things. They were going to move on to college. Their considerations were starting to become a little different from his. So I just knew there would come a time, post 10th grade or 12th grade, when all his current cohort of friends are going to disperse, and he's suddenly going to have this vacuum. And he's a very social kid. He kind of thrives on, talking to people and going out and stuff like that. So I actively started looking for a friend group for him. I knew I would have to look in the disability community to find a friend for him. His neurotypical classmates had known him since he was 4-year-old and had kind of just grown to love him for who he was. But I knew I would have to, if I'm making a new friendship for him, it would probably have to be someone who's gone down a similar life path as him. So I started looking for, young people. I put out some things on Facebook and some WhatsApp chats, and really didn't know where to find a friend for him. So this search kind of made me think, surely there's got to be a platform where I can find a friend for my kid, and that wasn't one. And anyway, so that I parked that thought, and I started, asking people. And I asked Mihan's pediatrician, who's Dr. Vibha Krishnamurthy. She is the founder of Ummeed Child Development Center in Mumbai. And she suggested Gopika. She said, why don't you meet Gopika? Her son Veer is the same age as Mihan. And I reached out to Gopika, and it took me 1.5 years to actually meet her finally. She says she was avoiding me because she'd had so much grief with trying to, get Veer to find a friend, and she'd kind of almost given up. But anyway, finally we did meet. We set up a sort of a activity for the two boys to, when they first met, to do something together so there would be no awkwardness between them. We set up a baking activity. They made some horrible rock hard cookies. But, they were smiling and they were hanging out. And at the end of the session, Veer went off, and Gopika asked Veer, hey, Veer, would you like to meet Mihan again? And he said yes. And his dad said he was smiling from cheek to cheek. And Mihan, of course, was also very happy to meet Veer again. So that was the start. And we started getting them to meet, planned other occasions for them to meet. And as they, met more and more frequently, they sort of developed a friendship. And we realized that this was something that was really powerful, and as time has gone by, they've started doing things together, exploring things together, going out. We sent them out for lunch for the first time, both of us with our hearts in our mouths. They went out for pizza. Gopika had done a full flow chart to explain to Veer, how he would pay, how
You guys were away? You guys were not?
We were not there. We kind of dropped them off. And
were you nearby?
No, we had, we had someone, actually my driver had taken them to the restaurant and he dropped them off and he was waiting outside. So we were kind of just waiting to see what would happen. And we knew that there was somebody to kind of jump in and, help if there was any requirement. But the idea was for us to actually, for not just for them, but even for us to kind of let go, right? I mean, you're always sort of hovering in the background, you're kind of defeating the purpose of this exercise. So multiple things like that happened. They met and they became really good friends. And I think we realized this was something that was really powerful. Both of them having a friend that is, around for them, someone to, at any time that there was a loose end, either of them were at a loose end, the other one was around to hang out with. For Gopika and me also, it became a big support system because, otherwise as a parent of a young person who now has the same expectations, both our boys have sisters who would have their friends and their sort of play dates and going out for parties and all of that. And we didn't want them to feel like they were any less and couldn't have all those same experiences, right? And for us as parents also, imagine you going out and leaving your kid at home. You wouldn't be able to sort of enjoy yourself and do it without a feeling of guilt. So I think we figured that this, having a friendship like this in our children's lives was very powerful and something that we needed to kind of make possible for other people as well. And as I said before, there was no platform like this. And we said, how simple it would be if I'm looking for a friend, I have, a platform where I can find people in a similar age group, maybe in a similar close by geographical location where I can go, there's a possibility of them meeting again. And that was sort of the idea behind building the app.
Amazing. That's a very, very thoughtful start of two mothers and building up an application for people with disabilities to connect, right?
Correct.
And this is about making friends and also finding partners.
So yes, absolutely. So when we started, there are two sections on the app. There's a self-user section where young people who are able to navigate an app like this by themselves and are 18 plus would be on the self-user section. For certain people, they may not have the ability to do this independently, might need some supervision, there would be safety concerns. So then the parent really needs to be the one doing that. But if they're 18 plus, we realized when we launched as a friendship app, a lot of people on our app are between the ages of 20 and 30. And like anyone else, are now looking. My own son said, why have you made this a friendship app? Why didn't you make this a dating app also, So it's not, well, it's not a dating app, but it's a place where you indicate on your profile whether you're looking for friendship, whether you're looking for...
He's right, I think. It should be a dating app. Why can't it be a dating app?
It is, well, it's a social app where you can find friends and you can find a love and
Tell me something, I was looking up and I saw data online that a lot of people think that people with disabilities should not be dating or it should be like that. Is it like that?
Absolutely. So again, on our self-user side, we were talking to a lot of young women who said that their parents cannot see them as adults. Like they just think of them as they don't think of them as having the same needs as the general population. So those aspirations that all of us have to find someone and find a loved one, and those things are just not possible for them because
are they hyper overprotective?
Parents are very protective. Also, just I think there's a situation where people with disabilities tend to be sort of infantilized a bit. They're always thought of as children.
Yeah.
ये special बच्चे, they're not बच्चे, they're adults, they're
It's a normal thing that people go around with. Like they will never grow up.
correct. So that mental framework needs to change. People need to look at people with disabilities as, just regular people with the same aspirations as hopes as anybody else.
So do you also at times need counselors on platform, like for parents or someone who is looking, who also have questions about their child, or a service with maybe an on board, like someone who is looking for, because parents at times might be skeptical about things, or because I think it is more about parents worrying. The kid is looking for a connection, definitely. Parents are sort of holding it up. Do they need some counseling at times, or do you talk to them?
As I said, we have two sections on the app. We have a self-user section and we have a caregiver section. The self-user section has actually taken off pretty well. The section which is the caregiver section is actually slow to move, is not moving forward as quickly. And maybe that's exactly what you're saying. I think parents sometimes are skeptical. And also they don't think of friendship as a priority. The biggest problem, I think, is that as a parent of a young person with any kind of special needs or a disability, is that you're very caught up in a lot of things, right? You're doing therapy, trying to get them through school, you're doing remedial education, then you're kind of trying to, next thing will be like skilling for a job, employment. You don't think of friendship as a thing you need to focus on, right? You think of it as like something fluffy, nice to have rather than must have. So you don't put in that effort. And believe me, like anything else, finding a friend for your child will require effort. Yeah. Because it's not like Gopika and myself, when we met and our boys met, it's not like they met and then they just took it off, right? And we took off from there. We had to kind of facilitate. We had to enable this friendship to blossom. And it required a bit of effort on our parts. That initial connection was the first step. After that, we had to kind of help them to nurture it.
But that is where you also save them from isolation, because isolation can lead to a lot of other mental health issues.
Absolutely.
Right. So I think that is where parents should understand that what they're doing in the name of protection is isolating their child and maybe sending them into a dark place.
Correct. Also, I think people think about, they think about fixing a problem when there is a problem, but why not prevent that problem? So making sure that your child has a friend, making sure they have a community, it means that they're going to prevent them from developing kind of mental health issues, that depression, withdrawing into themselves, feeling isolated and alone. They say that people with disabilities there's a huge, by some statistics, 61% of people with disabilities are chronically lonely. Just because of what? Because of barriers to making these friendships, which could be physical barriers, societal barriers, accessibility barriers. So I think it's just something that parents need to work on, because I think in order for them to put that effort, they need to see that there is value and it's important. And it's as important as any of the other things they focus on.
I think the importance should be on the top priority, and then figuring out ways. Like your platform is a way to figure it out.
Absolutely.
Had your platform not been there, then it is very difficult to figure it out. Yeah, so I think that is where you as a platform are facilitated now. But tell me something, why as society do people still find it awkward that people with disabilities can fall in love, or they should meet other people? Why is it so?
Again, I would just say that it's because of this conception of that people with disabilities are in some way different. They don't hold the same standards, hold them up to the same standards as the regular population. So, I wouldn't, I understand why parents are protective, because sometimes, additional needs means that there is vulnerability. But does that mean that you don't address some of those issues? Yes, you got to address the things and solve for them and, do things despite that, right? So, I mean, simple thing like, my son crossing the road. So, he is nervous, he's because of certain, sensory and cognitive issues. He may not be able to do it as easily as another kid for whom it will come organically. Does that mean I just don't let him cross the road? No, it meant that I need to work on it as a skill, step by step, and kind of maybe talk him through it, teach him strategies on how to do it, carefully, and then let him sort of take him there with a bit of effort. And I think it's the same with relationships, right? I mean, yeah, because there might be some issues that you're worried about, work on those issues, but don't let that be a reason not to go there.
And I think if you facilitate it properly, like I've met a few people like Karan Shah, Roli Shah, he's a dog trainer. He's been facilitated to become a dog trainer. Then I met this guy Prranav. He has autism. He was on my podcast, and he is first male model of India, first autistic model of India. So amazing things can happen if you facilitate. If there is facilitation. As a mother, tell me something. How did you deal with that grief, guilt, and that fixing mindset? Because our minds are figuring out mindset. When you were going through this as a mother in the journey, how was it?
So, I remember like him, Mihan, when he was born, it was like a big shock. It was an at-birth diagnosis. It was obviously like any parent, you're expecting to go down one route and now you're thrown on another path. So yeah, I mean, I won't deny it was that acceptance takes time. Even when you think you've reached a point of acceptance, you keep, wondering. You keep, I mean, it still sort of feels that hurt when you feel like, okay, why is my child not able to do this? How, and that worry for the future and all of those things are there. But then, at the end of the day, I think we have to also just always stay focused on, just making the best of a situation. And I think with that attitude, we kind of just decided, okay, well, this is what it is. We just have to do the best we can now within this situation. And then, of course, as those early days are hard, but then you sort of fall in love with your child. You just feel like, oh my God, I wouldn't want to change them for anything. So that process also happens. And then now when I look back at the time that I used to be so worried and so sad and so nervous, and I have to actually jog my memory to think about that, because that journey has now happened and I'm now in a place where, I feel like,
But I think love, being a mother, love is the primary emotion that you have. I think mothers are driven by love for the kid. Mothers primarily, and is like the empathy and emotions, the emotional intelligence of females are way higher.
Yes.
That is where they understand things beyond what is visible. So also, have you ever overcome a situation, because a lot of people at times feel embarrassed about socializing for their kid when it comes to some disability or something, because now they are normal.
Yeah.
And in social scenarios, these people now don't want things to come on to the family or something like that. We in India are still dealing with these kind of stigmas and taboos.
Well, personally, no. I think
in the general population, because I think
yes,
in tier 2, tier 3 cities, we have a lot of people facing these issues where the kid wants to go out, but now the parents are embarrassed.
Because as you said, we're I would say very lucky. Gopika's family, my family, where we consider ourselves very privileged that we had very accepting families, we had accepting friends. Nobody sort of bat an eyelid, and everybody's been on this journey with us together.
You're well-read, aware people.
Absolutely.
But I'm talking about the majority population,
absolutely,
which is unaware,
absolutely,
and they try to hide.
Totally.
At times do a lot of wrong things also.
Yes.
So yeah.
No, absolutely. And we constantly hear about other families that come to us and tell us that they've been shunned by the rest of their families, that the building kids who are in their, society don't want to play with their kid. The other parents are telling their kids to stay away from their kids because they learn some bad behaviors from them, or you'll become like them. So there's all of this that happens regularly. But I think that's the important thing about, I think that's why social media has been a fantastic thing for people with disabilities in particular, because you have, role models, you have the possibility of what your life could look like, and you have, you build a community where you were alone. Now you have other people that you can aspire to. You have stories that you can follow, that you can, again aspire to. I remember when Mihan was born, and he's now 21. There were social media was not a thing. There was no social media. There was Facebook, and maybe just was at a very seminal stage.
Orkut, the age of Orkut and all these things.
Correct. So, and we used to look like high and low for, I didn't know what my journey was going to look like. What were the possibilities for my son? Like, what did the life of a young adult with Down syndrome look like? I had very few examples of that. Today, there must be, with Down syndrome, there must be at least a couple of hundred Down syndrome influencers who we can follow. For example, there's this one young woman with Down syndrome in the UK who's a golfer. And my son loves golf. He's a golfer. And I think just watching her, reach certain heights in her game gives him that possibility of, I could be there. Or we as parents believe that he could be there, right? But if you didn't have that possibility or something to aspire to, you may not even try to go there, right? So,
for example, there was this gentleman, Ramesh Bishnoi, from a very small village in Rajasthan. He doesn't have both his hands.
Right.
Wears all his clothes. He drinks tea, and he can hold a cup from his feet and drink.
Amazing.
This guy has 1.5 million followers now. He's created a community where he's creating awareness, and that guy is so intelligent and vocal.
Correct.
He speaks so nice that the generic population is now inspired by him. So there are amazing possibilities on social media.
Correct.
So
Absolutely.
I think that is where we should give credits to social media
Absolutely.
for bringing in a lot of hope at least.
Absolutely, 100%.
So tell me more about the application. Is this, what's the idea, what's the vision behind it? Is it only about dating, friendship, or is it also about giving confidence to the community?
So the idea behind the application was, I think, the fact is that we all need friends.
We are
Nobody
social
should be alone.
animals.
Yeah, we are social animals.
Social
We all need
animals,
friends.
as humans, we thrive in social connections. That is by design a fact.
Absolutely. And for some people, finding those social connections may not be that easy because they don't happen that organically. For some people, say somebody who's blind, for example, may find it hard to access certain other social apps because they're not designed with accessibility, So that's the barrier. For a young person who has neurodivergence, maybe they've been around, amongst typical, other teenagers, they may not fit in. So they need to find a tribe of people that are accepting of them and that they can connect with. So that's a sort of another kind of barrier. So the idea for our app was to bring people on a platform where they can make those social connections. That was, simply put, I think that was the idea. And those social connections could be romantic, they could be platonic, they could be friendship, they could be, you could be looking for just a loved, a companion, you could be looking for a life partner, could be anything. But here's a platform where you can do it.
I think it is by design giving confidence to people with disabilities to reach out to more people and meeting more people in real life.
Absolutely. And you have, like, the moment you find your community, you find other people who've been on a similar life journey, you feel like you don't need to hide the fact that this is my...
You feel that you found your people.
Correct.
So tell me something. There are a few people claiming that people with disability should not be segregated. It should be mainstream apps having people with disabilities and normal people all together.
Yeah.
What do you say about that? Because none of that is happening, but a lot of people claim it should happen.
Yeah. So the thing is that in an ideal world, I think there is place for, I don't think there's one thing that is right and one thing that is wrong, right? So people say that should there be inclusive schools or should there be special schools? No, I don't think that's either or. Both have their place, right? Of course, in an ideal world, we all live in the world together, and therefore inclusive spaces are an ideal. But sometimes it's just not possible due to certain...
This is more like on paper, but in practical it is done then.
In practice, say there's a child or a young adult with a disability. the kind of life path that they're going to have vis-a-vis someone without a disability is just going to be, there's no getting away from the fact that it is going to be different. The life path is going to be different. Like where can they go? What can they do together? Somebody's interest is sports and mountain climbing. They may not be able to do that with a lot of people with disabilities just because it's just not possible. So therefore, at some point, your life paths do become slightly divergent because of what is possible. And therefore, it is great to have both options of people, a community of people who have a similar shared life path as yourself, like maybe other disabled friends who you can hang out with and you can do things with, and also to have friends who have no disability, because you connect with them on other issues.
Because on the same platform there will be another issue, like for example Ramesh Bishnoi told me that when he was born, everyone in the village was saying ki isko maar do aap. He is not, because that's how villagers at times think. गलत मानते हैं इसको कि ये कुछ गलत हो गया, आप इसको, ये कुछ नहीं कर पाएगा लाइफ में, क्यों उसको बड़ा करना है, वो आपके ऊपर बोझ बन जाएगा. बट हिज पेरेंट्स वर सपोर्टिव. हिज फादर, they left the village. They did a lot of things for him. So I think you're right. At times we as society, we don't have the right perception about things. We are stigmatized. We have a lot of taboo. Leave the disability, a lot of things in mental health. People say that pagal hai ya kuch hai, mujhe ab uska dost nahi banna hai. Parents start to say that avoid such people. A lot of things. So I think we need some silos in these situations. Also tell me about bullying as a parent. Have you faced that, or do you know people with disabilities have a big time?
Absolutely. It's quite rampant. I think in schools, any child with any, especially neurodivergent youngsters have faced terrible bullying in schools. It's very, very sad. Nobody wants to be their friends because, the moment anybody is perceived as different in any way, kids tend to kind of go away from them. Exclusion is one thing, but active bullying is also very, very common. And these kids sometimes, get into situations where they're really like miserable, sometimes just don't want to go back to school. Finally, so many of them just leave school and because they just cannot handle it anymore. So
in today's time, imagine in today's 21st century, we are talking about so much of education has happened.
Correct. It's just
horrible situation.
Just lack of sensitization of these other children but
I think there's also a big I am personally offended by these comedy shows today. In today's time, they sort of make mockery of disability at times, and even fat shaming happens. A lot of bullying happens through comedy today. I think we're misusing comedy. Earlier, 100 years ago, comedy was very intellectual comedy. Today it's very shallow comedy where people with differences are now shown as a part of as a object of comedy.
No, absolutely. It's just sometimes when you hear about even in this day and age, when people think about that they can just use language loosely, just kind of shame people for the fact that they're in some way different. I don't think that people realize what a loose comment can do to somebody.
Exactly. We have no idea about the consequences.
Right. I sometimes I follow this social media influencer. Her name is Vinayana, and she has a big following. And some of the horrible comments on her social media feed, I'd like, who are these people and what gives them the right to say things like this? I mean, talk is cheap, right? You just say something that, luckily, she's so amazing. She will actually highlight that comment and then use it to kind of give it back and create awareness about how terrible some of these things are.
Because some people enjoy digital bullying also, like they get pleasure out of it. They enjoy saying bad things.
Yeah.
Do you think India still has a long way to go about with disability rights and a lot of things where things can, in terms of accessibility also?
Oh, absolutely. I think the one step that we've at least we're moving towards is, at least on paper, there's a lot of, laws that have been put into place, but implementation is always the issue. So whether it's giving people a place in the workspace or in schools, public transport. I mean, our cities are so, I have a friend who has cerebral palsy, and she spent some time overseas, and she actually feels India's home, and yet she feels so sad that she can't move around on her own, whereas say in London, she can literally get on a bus, get on a tube, literally go around the city completely chaperoned by anybody. As an adult, you want that, right? You don't want somebody to... Having said that, there are, small steps being taken in the right direction. So I feel like
I think on paper things are right, but we're still far ahead of...
Very far, very far. Like, even if we want to have an event in Bombay, for example, where Vadia wants to do an event, we literally can count on our fingers the number of venues that are accessible, because our
Imagine that.
Yeah.
That is Mumbai.
Yeah.
What about tier 2, tier 3 cities?
Yeah, absolutely.
We hardly have anything.
Yeah.
So I think in terms of awareness, in terms of things that there are a lot of things that government also has to bring up, because you see things abroad.
Correct.
You see how things are in Europe and all. So there are, I think there are a lot of things are also, I was seeing a TED talk about this. If you design for disability, you design for everyone.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because then that's the best design.
Absolutely.
Because you have now had the maximum amount of empathy in designing something.
Correct.
So now if it is usable by someone with disability, it can be used by anyone.
Yeah.
So why don't we have that kind of a design system in place?
Totally. I mean, our app, for example, was built to be accessible for people with visual impairment. It was not a big effort. It was not a big expense. So I'm kind of shocked that other apps that are out there are not thinking about this, just shopping websites. We're a small bootstrapped company and we could do it. Surely, like a big, multinational can make that much of a small effort, but it's just not on people's radar.
It's not on radar, it's not on priority. For you being mothers, it's top priority. Right. So I think that's the difference. And maybe people like Rajvi Mariwala, daughter of Harsh Mariwala, is someone maybe you can talk to, because they have a wing which works on not-for-profit for mental health and a lot of well-being things that might be helpful. And I think there are changes happening, but it is very slow pace right now.
It is. And I think the more and more, we put our voices out there, build, awareness, people, suddenly some sparks are lit. And we use every platform we get to build awareness, to even put our stories out there about, what is possible. When people hear about Nihan and Veer's friendship, we think, okay, maybe there's other parents out there who think, okay, maybe this is a possibility for, my child or my young adult could have this too.
Tell me something else also. With people with disability, is there also in today's time a possibility for them to work, join something online, or do some, are there portals where they can work? Is there an opening for that? Because they would also want to earn money.
Yes.
And be independent for
there are some amounts of sort of work from home opportunities on our app. We on the self-user section of the app.
But I think that would be a great thing for you also, to bring up work opportunities on the application.
Absolutely. So, our app has the ability to form groups and group chats. So we have a group that is dedicated to work and work and earning opportunities. So people post, opportunities for work from home or jobs that are being put out. So that sort of happens organically on the app. It's like a bunch of people that get together. People share their experiences when you have a community. Yeah.
What advice would you give to parents who have differently abled kids and they are struggling with loneliness and self-worth issues, because they might be listening to this? Any advice?
I would say to parents, I think the best thing that you can do is build a community for your young person. It's going to just be the best thing that you can do for them going forward. If you have your tribe, or if you have your friends, you can handle anything, right? Not just for your child, but even for yourself. As a parent, when your child becomes friends with, another young person, and you connect with that parent, you've sort of built a circle of support for yourself, for your child, and you will sort of never feel that, their mental health is taken care of, their sense of self-worth goes up, their self-confidence goes up. The benefits of friendship should never be underrated. I think it's just something that we think happens organically, but sometimes we have to work hard to make it happen. And I would say put that effort into helping your child make those connections, whether you do it on our app, whether you do it in your community, whether you create opportunities as a parent.
But they have to step out. There might be certain set of risks, but you need to step out.
You need to step out, and it's not going to happen easily. Nothing ever happens easily, but you got to make that effort.
And for the listeners who are completely normal and are uncomfortable about talking for disability, what can they do for their peers whenever they encounter a person with disabilities? How can they change now?
So, I think the biggest thing that people with disabilities want from non-disabled peers is to just be treated like anybody else, right? They don't want to be treated with kid gloves. They don't want to be stared at. They don't want pity. They don't want sympathy. They just want you to, like how you would go and chit chat with somebody else. The biggest problem is discomfort that other people have due to lack of any opportunities to interact, right? Which is why we come to the whole idea of inclusive schools and inclusive spaces. If I met somebody with a disability, sometimes I may want to interact with them, but I feel like I don't know how. Am I going to say the wrong thing? I've never had that opportunity, which is why the more you do it and the more we have spaces where disabled and non-disabled people come together, that discomfort sort of falls away. And then you'll realize like people with disabilities are not very different from you. They may have certain, differences, but the 90% of the things between them and you are going to be the same.
But there is a definite difference in behavior when someone with disability comes in front of you.
For sure.
People are overwhelmed. And I think that, tell me something, why is pity and sympathy the first action? Because a lot of people just think that a person, by default, their action is that this person needs sympathy.
Yeah.
Pity is an outcome of some other thing, but sympathy is something they feel that this person needs.
Yeah.
Tell me more about that.
I think, that's a cultural thing. I think when we are, when we are kids, our parents tell us, this person has something less than you. So that's the way we've been brought up, and culturally that's the way we've been brought up. But I think the best way you can deal with it is ask the person what they want. Give them some agency to voice what their needs are. Do they want sympathy? No, they don't want sympathy. They just want to be seen for who they are.
I think people don't understand it, but sympathy and pity is the last thing anyone with disability wants.
Absolutely. They're proud about who they are. They just want to be seen for, who they are and be accepted for who they are, right? I mean, without being patronizing and...
So your app right now is Friendship and Disability. Do you also envision something like a shadi.com for people with disabilities? Because India mein na marriage parents decide karte hain for everyone almost. In this case also, 100% they will be involved.
Yeah.
So is there any vision for that? And what about marriage and disability?
Marriage and disability, absolutely. I mean, in terms of our app, where it's still early days, I said we're just about a year old. We're taking it one step at a time. We started with friendship. Now we've added on the ability for you to indicate that you're looking for a life partner. And then, of course, we do have a caregiver section, but it's mostly for people, neurodivergent youngsters who can't manage the app on their own. But of course, if the feedback is that there's a need for something like this, where the caregivers are asking for something like this, we can certainly, an app is it's code, right? You can add layers to it, and why not? If there's a need for that, why not? Right now, most of the young people that we've been speaking to, I think have liked the fact that they are in control of their own lives. But if they start expressing to us that, you know what, I can't do this without my parents, and my parents would also like to be part of a community, we'll certainly consider building it.
And do you see people with disabilities getting married? Have you seen any? And what does your son think about it?
plenty of examples. With people with physical disabilities, you have many examples of marriages, not just marriages that then families, kids, a full sort of a community that gets built. But with people that are neurodivergent, those stories are fewer and far between. Having said that, I follow a lot of accounts, Instagram accounts of people in other countries in the West where things are a little bit more, a little ahead of the way things are over here. And again, I see that possibility and I aspire to it. So my son certainly aspires to the fact that he will one day have a wife, live by himself, So I think, just never assume that something is not possible. Just assume competence, assume possibility, and then work towards it. If it happens, great. If it doesn't, that's also fine.
A lot of people also consider disabled adults as asexual, and at times, and especially a country like India where sex is a taboo topic, people don't talk about it.
Absolutely.
What do you think about it?
I mean, just plain wrong. People with disabilities have the same needs as anybody else. In fact, we have this, women, a bunch of women with disabilities that we've been consulting when we were making our app. They said, please, can we work together on a sort of a webinar or a seminar on disability and sexuality, because it is so taboo. The topics are just not spoken about. So they actually want us to sort of be involved in putting something together in this space, talking to other parents about, bringing these conversations out in the open. It's absolutely the need of the hour.
Because it's in general, normal, regular adults, they hide away from it. Parents hide away from it.
Yeah.
Everyone is hiding away from it.
Yeah.
While it is the most important topic and we are the most populated nation in the world.
Exactly.
Surprisingly, sex is the only topic we don't want to talk about.
Totally. No, it's very sad. It is very sad. And it's just, it's definitely something that needs to be put out there. The
So it's
shame
completely
and
normal for people should dismantle this belief.
100% dismantle this belief. It's just, it's cruel to think of them as not having, the same needs as anybody else, right? I mean, people with disabilities,
It's a very dark thought.
Just othering them to think they're in any way different is just wrong.
Tell me more about responsibilities, because when a person with disability is dating a lot of people, at times parents also think it is too much of responsibilities and heartbreaks. If heartbreaks happen, how will they deal with that? Because in general, people are scared of heartbreaks. So normal humans, they just are scared of heartbreaks. So
Again, this comes from, I think this issue is more, it comes from like, okay, I'm worried about this, so I don't go there. So yes, there may be heartbreak, and yes, someone with disability may be more invested in a relationship because it's come with a little more effort. But those conversations need to happen that, look, if I talk to my son, for example, right? I mean, I would talk to him like I would talk to my daughter. But if there's a possibility that this may not work out, you have to be prepared for any eventuality. Does that mean you don't go in that direction just because of that fear of something that may or may not happen? That's not fair, right? I mean, so we just need to understand those things and prepare for them accordingly. Yeah.
You need to educate them about those.
Absolutely, yeah.
And have you also seen a normal, regular person falling in love or having a relationship with a person with disability at times? Because these people are told by society कि तू sacrifice कर रहा है, you are sort of sacrificing something. They're ashamed about it.
I've seen many examples like that. So it's not impossible. It sometimes is harder because, as I said, the life paths sometimes don't cross, and sometimes that just means that possibility of meeting people who are open-minded is not that common, but it is possible and it does happen. I know a bunch of examples where there are marriages between...
What would you like to say to these people? Because a lot of these guys hear from public on the society that, why are you sacrificing?
Why are you sacrificing? No.
Can you tell them more about what love really is?
Well, love is, a connection, a deep connection that you have with another human being. And that connection can happen with someone who may be different from you in some ways.
It's a feeling which
It's like, are you connecting with that person? And if that happens, then whether the person has a disability or no disability should make no difference.
Tell me something, a person who with a disability, when they're a listener on this podcast, tell me something, how do they figure out difference between a genuine connection, curiosity, or just infatuation? How do they figure it out? What is some tips or some points about that?
So I would say if a person with disability is evaluating a relationship, I think the biggest thing that I would say is evaluate it for equality. It shouldn't be there's one person in the relationship that is controlling or demanding more. It should be a relationship of equals, and if that is happening, then you have the possibility of a true friendship.
So looking for equality is the top priority.
Yeah, looking for it shouldn't be like one person is wanting this more and therefore willing to sacrifice more and settle for something. Both people should come at it.
There should be rational discussion after meeting, maybe have some things to discuss which are raw and candid.
Yeah, of course. I mean, like any relationship, right? You have
Because at times infatuation sort of leads to unanswered questions.
Yeah. Well, it's a journey. Infatuation has it in its own right, has a place for all of us.
It's a great starting point. But I think the next step should be very clear.
Correct. Yeah, you have to, if you're thinking...
Because that is how mature relationships grow.
Absolutely. The thing is that a person with disability sometimes feels that because they have a disability, they should expect less, in some way. And if you are constantly just settling for something, that's not going to make you happy, long term.
I have some rapid fire questions for you. Let's do that. So, pity versus attraction. How can people tell the difference?
I think it's just that spark, right? I mean, you figure out those like that emoji with the hearts in the eyes. If you see that, then you're onto a good thing.
What hurts more, rejection or being chosen out of pity? What hurts more?
I would think being chosen out of pity long term, because rejection is a one-off thing, you're done. But being chosen out of pity is a process that lingers.
How does society shift from pity to partnership?
I think just early on, exposure to, people with differences, just kind of having more visibility, means that they're not going to see the person with disability as someone that needs to be pitied. So it comes from an early place of exposure, visibility, and getting people to, just interact.
Desensitize.
Yeah.
If you could change one mindset relating to disabled people in India overnight, what would that be?
I would just say that the mindset is that people with disabilities are not capable. So just thinking of them as capable, contributing human beings is, if you start there, you can then, a lot of things would change. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you so much. I think this was an enlightening conversation for a lot of people.
Thank you.
And I think I wish you get all the success in creating this ecosystem.
Thank you.